Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Friedman Quinn with Wilton Library with the Adult Programming Department. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight, and it's our pleasure to co-sponsor this debate tonight along with the League of Women Voters and Good Morning Wilton. Without much further ado, I'd like to just tell you that tonight you'll be hearing candidates for the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as the Board of Ed. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Pam Clem with the League of Women Voters of Wilton.
I'd like to thank all of you for showing up, and I'd really like to thank all of the candidates. Our town runs on volunteers, and we really, really respect and thank you all for putting yourself out there. We are lucky this year, as last year and the year before, to have Kay Maxwell be our moderator. Kay has a resume this long, but she asks us to only introduce her as the prior president of the Connecticut League of Women Voters and of the U.S. League of Women Voters. Thank you very much for helping us out again.
Welcome everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here again. Now, our purpose this evening, obviously, is to provide you with an opportunity to hear the candidates' views on issues facing Wilton. The first debate will be among 6 candidates for the Board of Planning and Zoning, 5 of whom will be elected. Now, I want to explain that 2 candidates could not be with us this evening, and they are Jill Warren, a Republican who is on her honeymoon, I'm told. Don't understand why she didn't choose the debate. And the other is, I am sorry, who am I missing?
Jed England.
Yes, Jed England. We just learned this afternoon, well, actually just a few minutes ago, that he's not going to be able to join us. Thus, a different number of group here. Then the second debate then will be among 3 candidates for the Board of Education, all of whom will be elected. Now, the format is designed to allow the candidates time to discuss the issues. The only rule is that the total time used by each candidate at the conclusion of the debate be approximately the same. The questions have come from the public, both prior to the debate and those in attendance this evening. Now, the candidates are not restricted to 1 or 2 minute responses. Instead, they can spend as little or as much time within reason as they feel is appropriate to discuss each issue. Our goal is to encourage some debate. Now, the candidates are going to take turns being the first to respond to a question, and following the question period, each candidate will make a 1 minute closing statement. Members of the League are serving as timers for the debates, and they will keep the candidates and me informed of the time expended. And if a serious imbalance in time used occurs during the course of the debate, I'll call it to their attention and we'll get it corrected. And so it is now my pleasure to introduce the candidates. To my far right is Margaret Ritz, Democrat. To her left, Jessica Ramey, Democrat. To her left, Colin Christ, Republican. To his left is Trevor Hufford. And to his left is, well, that's where we would have had Jed England, so I'll have to cross him out. And then, Democrat Ken Hoffman. And last but not least, Michelle Seidlin-Benning, Democrat. Did I get everyone in the right order? All right. So let's go to the questions, and Ms. Ritz, you're the first to respond to the first question. Where are the P&Z traffic and parking studies of Wilton Route 7 and Wilton Center? Each developer is responsible for its own traffic study outlining vehicle entrances and exits of the apartment complex. Will the public be informed of these plans?
Thank you for the question.
And put the microphone very close to you, please. Yes.
I want to say
That's her.
thank you
First, to the library and the League of Women Voters, and to everybody in the audience who came out tonight in support of our wonderful town, Wilton. Many of us are concerned about the question that you're asking and why we as a town do not have answers. I think that is something that speaks to the lack of communication, the lack of transparency, and our voice being silenced within the community. The issues that we all seem to be concerned about in terms of traffic and infrastructure impact on the upcoming development has on our town, we would like to have answers on this as well.
Nice.
Thank you.
Ms. Rainey?
Yes, I agree with, can you hear me? I agree with.
I think you need to get just a little closer to the microphone.
I agree with what Margaret said. Yes, we need to do a better job of communicating clearly and concisely to the public. I've spoken to a lot of voters campaigning this election season, and many of them felt that they found out about new developments or after they had already been approved or after they had already gone up. So planning and zoning does need to make sure that the public knows about things in advance and has the opportunity to comment in advance as well. That was definitely a sticking point with residents. I also think that, you know, having meetings in person might be able to allow for more people to attend and give comments. And also, P&Z can be more proactive at asking for comments from people. It's just not saying, oh, we're having a meeting on this day, but actually doing a better job of advertising it so people are aware.
Mr. Chris?
I agree with the level of transparency that the town seeks, but I'll also point out that in 2019, the Plan of Conservation and Development was ratified by the board. They did an outstanding job working together on a bipartisan basis to outline the framework and the guardrails with which the town is going to grow over the next decade plus. I believe that this town has an opportunity to learn more about that, as I have in studying for a possibility of joining this board. It's my view that the board, this commission, has done an outstanding job of really being pragmatic and growing the grand list and the tax base over the last several years. I know that there are questions about whether or not this town is developing too fast, but I'll just point out that without the development, I think we're going to have a tough time continuing to invest in our education system, which is really what this town is known for. And, you know, we really have to avoid, you know, higher taxes. And I do think that growing our grand list, growing the tax base of this town will drive down the mill rate, at least stabilize it initially and drive it down. And it's my view that this board has done a terrific job on a bipartisan basis. And if we're interested in understanding more about the process from which there's a project that's going to be reviewed by the board to when it's approved by the board, I think that we can all participate in that.
Mr. Hubbard?
So I think the some of the issues with the current process is that we're spending way too much time on the details of zoning and not enough in planning up front. So if this slate of the Democrats that you see in front of you is elected, we're committed to engaging the town in the debate in the development of the future POCD, master plans, and overlays, and trying to really get people involved so that they know what is there. I do think there was a great job done on the prior POCDs and master plan. I think a lot of the ideas are great, but I don't think, and I think there was a real effort to engage people, but I don't think it was successful, unfortunately. So I think we should really try to do a better job engaging the public in advance of projects, because getting engagement once a project is down the road too far is, you know, interesting and thoughtful, but it's not effective communication.
Mr. Hoffman?
I think that there has been in the history of
Maybe a
planning
little closer.
I think in the history of planning and zoning and being an incumbent on the commission, a big difference between expectations and engagement. There is, if you talk to the current leadership of planning and zoning, there's an expectation that the public is as involved as we are, and that they have gone to every meeting and they were part of the POCD development process, which is a good document, but if you quizzed me before I became a member of planning and zoning about POCD, I would not have been as informed as I am today. So I think we need to change the engagement process and involve the public in the deliberations of planning and zoning. We need listening sessions. We need planning sessions. We need ways for the public to be involved that still meet the test of the lawyers who don't want us discussing individual projects, but allow us to gain the opinion of the public so we know which way things should go. Second, as was mentioned before, Wilton is at an economic crossroads. Anyone who believes that their increase in their price of their house in the last year has somehow impacted their taxes, well, I'm afraid that's wrong. The revaluation year was 2 years ago, not last year, and therefore the only things that kept the taxes down last year were ASML and the new developments that were put online. There is no other increase to the grand list with the exception of a few new houses. So it's important to know how the town works and the economics works, which will lead me to my third point. I've been on the board for a few years. I've made lots of suggestions that we should understand the economic impact of these new developments, that we should understand the costs to the town, that we should understand what the responsibilities of the developers are to defray expenses, and that was rejected by the Republican leadership of the board. They simply don't want to have those discussions. So I encourage us, as we go forward, to change the policies of the board, get more engagement, to listen more to the public, and to understand the economic impact of the decisions we're making. Thank you.
Ms. Sanfilippo?
Thank you, Kay. Thank you to the Library and the League of Women Voters for hosting us this evening. Can you hear me a little better now? Thank you. So I just wanted to recap the question. Kay, you had asked about the P&Z traffic studies, where they were, and if the public would be informed of the plans associated with the results of these studies. I'm going to agree with a majority of what the prior candidates have said, especially with regard to how this speaks to the current P&Z's Commission's silencing of our community. The P&Z Commission's goal should be to not only incorporate input into our rules and regulations and the next POCD that will be written, that Colin referenced, it should seek input from the public, not only incorporate it, but actively seek this input. The new system, OpenGov, will provide the new P&Z Commission the capabilities to share online updates with our town, as well as collect applications. So as a Democratic P&Z candidate, it's important for the public to know that our goal is to increase the accessibility of the P&Z Commission. As Jessica mentioned, in-person meetings is just one tactic. Early public sessions, collecting surveys, and again, utilizing technology to our benefit. So that, as an example, is our new OpenGov system. The Democratic candidates on P&Z believe that there is a transparency issue, and we are seeking to resolve it. So again, we will provide you with those traffic studies and that information early enough on in the phased, community-centric P&Z process that we promise. Thank you.
Any other comment on that question from anyone? All right, then we'll move to the next question, and Ms. Rainey, you're the first to respond. Excuse me. The Hines School Sisters of Notre Dame pre-application for development of 280 units at 345 Belden Hill will need a change in Wilton's zoning regulations, not just a variance. Hines acknowledges that their proposed use is not currently allowed. So what is your position on changing Wilton's zoning regulations at the request of developers?
I am happy to answer that question. I believe that as candidates, we can't comment on the specific proposals that haven't been approved or denied yet for legal reasons, but in general, I think that we need to work with developers and we need to assess, the first question has to be, how will this best serve Wilton? Will putting this development in this location, will it increase our tax base and help lower our mill rate? Will it increase traffic or perhaps the number of ambulances going to a certain location depending on what the housing is for? These are really important questions that we need to consider. And look, as other candidates have said, development is going to happen, and we do need to be able to negotiate well and compromise with developers in order to get the best result for the town.
Mr. Chris?
Well, that location was tax exempt for however many years. I think it goes back to the 60s.
A little closer to the microphone.
Sorry. Thank you. So that location was tax exempt going back to when it was built in the 60s. Again, I believe strongly that, you know, the senior living community in our town of Wilton is a very important one. In this case, we have to look at the opportunity that this location has to improve the revenue of the grand list. I believe I'm a pro-growth person, so I think that the zoning changes that are required for this property should be considered. I also think that as far as traffic goes, you know, that's a location that, you know, has long been a school zone to begin with. I think the stop signs that are, you know, that separate 106 from Belton Hill are adequate. I don't believe that there's any further infrastructure required there, and I do believe that this project should be one that we get behind and approve.
Mr. Hufford?
Well, I think this example of a project is the kind of thing we need to get in front of in the future. There are many different areas within town that there are not overlays done for. We know that other areas like Cannondale, Georgetown, other areas of Route 7, where these kind of projects could be proposed and we'll be behind on. So won't be able to control the process. So I think we should be trying to get ahead of these projects by understanding what people want in these kind of areas and then trying to come up with overlays that might suggest projects for development, and get ahead of the developers so that we're not behind when a project comes up that we're going, I don't want to develop areas just because it's going to increase the ground list. I think that's a great goal or a great thing that happens, and it will happen, but I don't want to do it just because of that.
Mr. Hoffman?
Sure. I'm on planning and zoning, so I guess I can't comment exactly on this development. It's before the board right now. But I will say this. While I've been on the board, I have constantly been disappointed that we don't have a better understanding of the economic impact of any development on the town. When we ask questions and when the public writes and asks questions about the impact on the schools, about the impact, as Trevor said, about ambulances and other emergency vehicles in the town, the impact on the budget, we simply don't have those answers. So we're making decisions as the lights were off in this room, and we were making decisions in the dark. This may be, and other developments may be, accretive to the town, a lovely environmental impact, but we don't have that. The second thing we don't do is we don't demand of the developers that they help assuage any negative impacts on the town. We don't see them offering to fund ambulances. I assume ambulances is the plural of ambulance. We just don't see them doing that. We don't see them offering to take some of their property and have public walks put on those pieces of the property. So once again, I think there's a lot to do, there's a lot of engagement that can happen, and there's a lot more information we can have while we make these decisions.
Ms. Seifenbene?
Thank you. With regard to the pre-application, again, I'm not going to comment on specifics with regard to a proposal in front of the board in the pre-application phase. However, I do agree again with the prior candidates with regard to informed decisions. So professionally, I work as a registered nurse. Before patients receive any type of procedure, we give them something called informed consent. Informed consent provides them with all of the information for them to make an informed decision about whether or not they want a procedure. It is unethical to encourage a patient or have a patient receive a procedure without providing them with informed consent. Planning our town should be very similar. All of that information should be accessible, readily available, and the commission should encourage the public to seek that information so that they can make informed decisions. With regard to the site itself, as Ken alluded to, there's a systems approach that we need to take when considering this development. The development is seeking, I believe, 280 senior units, and when we consider state legislation and how this equates to housing unit equivalents, we need to consider that senior living is actually on the lower end of that spectrum. So it's not something that we're necessarily getting credit for when we look at median income housing because of our current P&Z's commission failure to negotiate and allow transparency with the process. Thank you.
Ms. Fitz?
Can you hear me? Okay. So what a location to add 280 units. It's not like it's going to affect anybody's commute to Miller Driscoll or to work in the morning. Anyway, it would have been nice if this was something that was thought about in advance, that we had identified locations around the town that we could suggest to developers who are coming into town, saying, hey, you might be interested in, this property at 345 Belden Hill, but we have other options that might better suit your needs. I'd like to also talk about planning, because it's something that we've all talked about a little bit up here, and how the Plan of Conservation and Development, while it is a well-written document that sounds good on paper, it's the execution that is lacking, and the communication beyond that document that's also lacking. I feel like collaboration, as I said, collaboration with developers where we work with them to guide them toward properties that work best for our town is helpful. Additionally, if we have a plan for the entire town, we know how we expect it to grow over the next 20, 30, 40 years. We know what's appropriate then within our town. But because there isn't a plan that goes beyond and thinks toward future generations living in Wilton, we can't answer some of these questions. Something that I do for my job, depending on whatever job I'm on, I'm a contracted employee. I've worked in television for the last 30 years. A number of things that I've done include a competition type show in culinary where you have to build through these competitions. What I do is work with lawyers, I work with compliance, I organize, I come up creatively with how this is all going to be laid out. I lay it all out, I discuss with all the departments how it's going to go. We test things out because you wouldn't do something and spend money on it if you didn't test. We also, I plan significantly. I'm collaborative. I've worked in a male-dominated industry and I don't have an issue, speaking my mind to anyone at any time. And working with developers will be something that I do well. Anyway.
Does anyone have any additional comment on that question?
I'd just like to wonder what the alternative plan is. Are we talking about green space? I mean, this is, again, a tax-exempt location for, you're talking 50 years. And we have an opportunity as a town to increase our tax revenue. So I think that we should be focused on growth. Obviously, the infrastructure support this property is very important, but I do think that there's a plan in place for that.
Any other comment on that question?
Yeah, again, there's not only one plan for this property, okay? So if this plan were to go away, which I'm not in any way against, it's a good plan, okay? But there isn't one plan for this property. I guarantee you, if this property goes away, there'll be a second.
And that could potentially be apartments on Belden Hill?
It could be.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was, shut it off
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
I was just gonna say that in terms of changing regulations, that maybe this isn't the project to change the regulations for, but I am not opposed to changing regulations when the time and the situation calls for it.
Any other comment? Ready for the next question? All right.
I have just one comment, I apologize. I just wanted to respond to Colin. I don't think that, again, it goes back to informed decision-making. I don't think that we can even begin to fathom what can go there, what regulations, what projects should sort of alter or revise our regulations. I think we need to do a better job of listening to our town, seeking their input and asking what they want. And I don't think, fear-mongering in terms of, oh, well, what's the alternative? Is it an apartment building? That's not gonna bring our town or our community together, and that will only create more divisiveness. So I think that it starts with listening, and hearing what our community has to say. Thank you.
And I'm gonna finish that up with another big part of planning is figuring out how you can poke the holes in it. What are the rules that we've put in place, potentially in the plan of conservation and development, that aren't working appropriately for our town? How can we, if a developer is coming to our town and they see this, how can they work around these rules to get what they want? We need to poke all the holes in it, figure out how it isn't working, and how we can then restructure and streamline things so that the focus is on community good and benefit to our community.
I'd just like to say one final thing. I've never been involved in a traffic jam outside a senior living center of any kind, so I just wanted to go on record as saying that.
A quick question for you. Have you ever been stuck behind an ambulance outside a senior living center?
I'd like to say that I drive down Wilton Hill every day, and even in the middle of the summer, I'm often stuck for 5 minutes at the corner where this development is happening. So I disagree that there are no traffic jams in that area, and I do not know for a fact that this will not increase the traffic in the area with ingress and egress, and or be a burden to the town's infrastructure. I simply don't have enough information.
Ready for the next question?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Christ, you're first to respond. Pardon me. Every new development should require adequate parking. Should the regulations of planning and zoning provide additional parking considering future development in Wilton Center?
Well, we're sort of landlocked in Wilton Center, and we have a beautiful river that flows through it. So I do think that, we've been subject to, the postage stamp that we have downtown. So I do think that the Kimco property and the redevelopment of that has some significant parking plan for it. And I do believe that parking is an important part to provide for a vibrant retail space, and certainly for our business persons and residents that are going to live downtown. But I don't think that we need to pave paradise to achieve our goals.
Mr. Humphrey?
Yeah, I'm not sure we need to add an enormous amount of parking. I'd love to see a lot more of the development downtown be more walkable, so that hopefully we're not adding a lot more cars. Many of the developments can have parking underneath them, so that would be an alternative. We've seen that in a couple of the projects that have already gone.
Mr. Huffman?
I would love to see a parking plan for the town that really takes into account the use of the different spaces in the town, whether downtown, in other areas of the town, up in Georgetown, all those types of things. I have yet to see a comprehensive parking plan for Wilton. If you look at our peer towns that surround Wilton, they all have municipal lots. Many of them have paid municipal lots. They've tried to put some planning against this. There have been private and town partnerships that buy up pieces of land for that use. Wilton doesn't seem to think that way. Wilton seems to think the problem will just go away. I'm less concerned about the, does a particular apartment building have, 22 or 24 parking spaces? That's a regulatory matter which can be dealt with almost as an administrative matter by planning and zoning. But I'm dismayed that we don't take an overall look at the situation in concurrence with the town that we want to live in.
Ms. Ivan-Bailey?
I would agree with Ken and with Colin as well. I don't necessarily think, as Colin put it so nicely, we're not looking to pave paradise to make, additional space. I think one of the things that I've heard from community members while canvassing is a need for walkability, as Ken referenced. Walkability only enhances a healthy lifestyle, and it's an asset to our town. Connecting trails and ensuring, the median income housing does have access to transportation is very important as well.
Ms. Ritz?
I would like to say that Wilton Town Center parking potentially could become an issue. There are new apartments coming in there, as we all know, which means additional cars. And Wilton does have a very limited amount of space in the town center. So thinking creatively about how to restructure underutilized spaces within town center could benefit our overall plan for that area and how traffic impacts and parking impacts the town center. I think we should also consider exploring potential off-site parking locations that are nearby. Does that require expanded sidewalks, which I would also suggest should go all the way up to the school at Miller Driscoll and all the way up Old Ridgefield Road, connecting to middle school down to the high school. I'd also like, just while I'm throwing these out, I'd also like Route 7 to have bike lanes so that we can have more people that are living potentially in the apartments that are coming around town or on Route 7, bike on the bike lanes down to ASML on Route 7 and go directly to work rather than using a car. Requiring potentially underground parking lots in locations where it's appropriate, and if there's an off-site parking structure, we could look into getting some sort of electric trolley that shuttles people around town. It would be cute and it would match Wilton's overall vibe.
Ms. Rankin?
Well, I don't have all the answers of how we're going to solve Wilton's parking issues, which I think in town center are really going to come into view once the apartment just across here and the new Kimco development start renting out. Traffic is going to be an issue, parking is going to be difficult, and these were perhaps things that should have been thought of during the proposal approval process. I will say that adding the bridge from the train station to Merlin Meadows has been amazing. That has I'm a runner, you may have seen me running around town, but that has drastically improved the walkability of Wilton and has connected our train station to our town center. I think we also, if we're going to be doing all of this development in our town center, we also need to think of a way to get people who are driving down Route 7 into our town center, going to our businesses, and supporting the town that way.
Any other comment on that question? Okay, next question. Mr. Hufford, you're the first to respond. Wilton remains below the 10% affordable housing threshold. What proactive steps will you take to add diverse housing and avoid another 830G project?
Well, I do support trying to achieve 10% affordable housing in town, or in the whole town. So I do think we need to raise the target threshold for development of apartments to 15%, not to 10%, because we can never get to 15 or to 10% if we have a target of 10%. I'm sorry if that was complicated math. I think we should, first of all, there should be somewhere on our website that actually does an accounting of where we're at today. I tried to put together an article, an op-ed, to discuss this, and there is nowhere on our website that currently brings you up to date on where we're at today. So nobody can plan because we don't know where we are. And I think that's an important thing. And if we actually care about it, you can't care about it. So I think that's something we should do. On ideas to solve that problem, again, I think we should have a target of 15%. Many of our neighbor towns have that. So I don't think that's something that we should be scared about. I think there are ideas, the town owns a lot of land. I think there's some private partnership ideas that we should do. You know, that's not, I'm not a developer. I don't know whether that works or doesn't work, but it's a great idea. A couple of people have suggested that we take a look at some of the state-owned land in town, Super 7. I think the idea's been around for a long time. Maybe we should look at that again. I think there are a great number of people in town that are creative. I don't think this should be something that's scary. The back of the envelope number I've put together is that we need 300 more affordable houses, or affordable housing units to be developed over the next 10 years. I don't think that's something that we should be scared about doing.
Mr. Hoffman?
Great. First I want to agree with what Trevor just said. I think that we need a way to look at the numbers on a town-wide basis. Currently, planning and zoning operates as a marvel of myopia. It looks at singular projects and takes that and tries to extrapolate, what we should do in affordable housing. And what that does is something that I think is really a problem. So a developer comes in to discuss a project, or if we go back to the mistake that the subcommittee made on the downtown zone in terms of not including affordable housing, no one looks at the developers and says, are you going to be a good corporate citizen of Wilton? And do you accept citizenship as your development, as part of Wilton and building Wilton's future? I agree completely with Trevor that we need to jump the number up to 15% of median income housing as a plan. The reason I say median income, if you wonder what a typical affordable apartment costs in Wilton, it's generally around $3,000 to $4,000 a month, which means if you don't make $140,000 to $150,000 a year in your household, it's simply not affordable if you use a calculation that people should spend no more than a third of their income to pay for their housing costs. So again, I mean, this is messed up. Okay, if you look at the way the individual decisions were made on any of these developments about affordable housing, they were made in a singular unit in a vacuum, and it simply is not going to solve the problem. With regard to the public and private partnerships, I really would encourage planning and zoning and other areas of the town, including the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen, to really have open sessions about what we mean by public and private partnerships in Wilton. There are a lot of great ideas. I fear they won't be executed unless we get that kind of initiative going. Thank you.
Ms. Agamben?
I'm going to again echo what Ken had said with regards to median income housing. This is a very important fact to understand, that the median income in Wilton is approximately $125,000. So it's really, Ken was very gracious and he glazed over the downtown center development. However, the current P&Z Commission failed to acknowledge their own error with contracts with this developer to ensure that we met the threshold for median income housing. So their negligence actually left Wilton more vulnerable to this state legislation. And so it's very important for us as a community to come together. There are various tactics and ways that we can work with developers. There's opportunity for adaptive reuse, which is the use of old historic buildings. Again, a sentiment that I've gathered from the community while canvassing, we can consider inclusionary zoning, zoning benefits, density bonuses. There's a variety of opportunity for us to fairly and agreeably negotiate with developers which is the opposite of what the current P&Z Commission has done. Thank you.
Ms. Ritz,
Hi.
you could just leave your microphone.
I know,
on.
I'm a little fidgety with the mic. So this is another situation where an extensive plan that had been thought out, thought through, examined, discussed, everybody understood what was going into it. This is where this plan really would have benefited us, because then we wouldn't be in a position where we're going, how did we get here? How did this happen? We would have been tracking it from the beginning. We would have been actively going out in search of developers who want to work in this type of community in line with the community values. We would not find ourselves in a situation with a big town, oopsie, I forgot to talk, oopsie, Kimco, we didn't meet the threshold there with the affordable housing minimum. So rather than going back and negotiating like you would in a business situation, trying to get them on board, work with us after we've had a long-term negotiation with these developers, that would have been to our benefit, to go to them after the fact and say, hey, we overlooked this by mistake. Can you please work with us and increase that number by a little bit? A situation in the future would be, we would need to potentially look at landlords and say, hey, are you willing to convert some of these locations? Are there buildings within our walkable environment that potentially are underutilized, or that we could add to by creating incentives to encourage them to build maybe a second level and have that be all affordable housing? But tracking it from beginning to end is what we need to be doing, because every 10 years, one of these will go off affordable housing, and if we're not tracking it, then how do we know where we stand?
Ms. Rainey?
So I think Wilton does not exist in a bubble, right? We are not we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We are surrounded by other towns who are doing this successfully. I believe New Canaan and Fairfield have both received exceptions from the 830G developments because of all the progress they have made towards having more median income housing in their towns. This is simple math. Right now, Wilton is, I believe, just below 4% for median income housing. If we continue, as the current P&Z is doing, of only requiring 10% of affordable housing in new developments, we will never meet the state mandated threshold of 10%, right? That's just math. So we do need to increase the percentage in new developments. If we look at other towns, Westport currently requires 20% affordable housing in their new developments. New Canaan requires 15%, Darien 14%. These are towns that are making headway into having more options. We should also, as others have said, increase our threshold to 15% for new developments, and that is going to help us avoid future 830G developments like the one straight ahead across the street from the library.
Mr. Chris?
Well, I'm for affordable housing, and I do think that many folks in this room have invested an awful lot in taxes in this town. I certainly have been here for 16 years and have paid a small fortune in taxes. I believe that the lowest rung of our socioeconomic folks that are interested in this town should have an opportunity to live in this town. But I also think that there needs to be some practical math applied to them having a chance to live in this town and make ends meet, given inflation going through the roof, and having a median income of this town at $150,000. That's a big rent. So we're investing an awful lot of time in this shiny object that's been around since 1989, which is 830G. And I do think that there's a lot of merit in 830G. I also think that there'd be a great opportunity for us to get well out ahead and work with developers on the commercial capacity that is available, particularly around the Route 7 area. There's some commercial capacity still available downtown, and get out ahead and work very closely with these developers to ensure that there is an affordable housing mandate that's met, that's directed by the town of Wilton, not Hartford, Connecticut. The last time I checked, I don't know what Hartford, Connecticut does for me as an individual, a resident of this town. I think this town does an awful lot for one another. It's Wilton that powers this forward, it's not Hartford. And I do believe that affordable housing should be paramount, but I also think it has its limitations.
Any other comments on that question? Yes, go ahead.
Well, so I agree with Colin. We should have affordable housing in town. And it shouldn't be a mandate necessarily from the state. But I haven't seen anything from P&Z in the last 10 years that has suggested that Wilton step up to 10%. So thank God the state has done something.
One other thing I just want to add to this, if I could. Wilton has an artificial appearance of success of buildings surrounding and being part of the town. If you're not aware, the current commercial vacancy rate in Wilton hovers around 50%, which is about 40% lower than it is in Fairfield or some of the other surrounding towns. So if you're looking for building stock in Wilton, and by the way, the quality of a lot of that space has gone down tremendously over the last 10 years as owners haven't supported that infrastructure and kept up with maintenance. So there is a hidden problem in Wilton behind a lot of this, which is the excess of empty office space that is in this town. We do have and then if you think of the results of that and not having enough people downtown, we do have enough parking for the tumbleweeds after 9 p.m., but there isn't a whole lot of activity that is happening to solve those problems. And I think that goes along with the 830G discussion. We need vibrancy, we need people, we need more development that is well thought out and economically judged to fit in the town.
Any other comment on that question? All right, then next question, Mr. Hoffman, you're first to respond. How would the town reduce the tax burden on homeowners relative to commercial properties?
I'd like to see the town have an active campaign to invite some other organization like ASML into Wilton. We're in danger, although that's been very good for the town economically, we're in danger of becoming a one-company town, and I think that we really need to have a lot of activity to attract something else in addition to the good work that ASML has done in Wilton. We need to hedge our bets. The second thing I think we really need to do is we need to really look at the locations for the other places in town, how we're going to support a balance between multifamily housing. And I think we need to look more exclusively at how we're going to encourage mixed use and redevelopment of mixed use buildings in town. Past that, we hopefully can have our active legislators encourage transportation in Wilton. The lack of adequate train service to Wilton or transportation to Wilton impacts businesses wanting to move to Wilton. I know this personally from one of the managers in our firm who I tasked with seeing if we could move a division to Wilton, and she came back and said, absolutely not. I won't do that to our employees. And the reason was the transportation and the lack of quality space. So I think that's some things I would do.
Ms. Benny?
I'm going to agree with what Ken said as well. I think something that he tapped into in his previous answer is that 40% vacancy in our commercial space. So that's just vacant space sitting there. That's not commercial, that's not residential, that's in no way beneficial to our town. So I think that there is a very viable, feasible path forward through filling that vacancy and that gap commercial space. And I think that, again, taps into what our town wants. I've heard while canvassing that, other towns surrounding us have other businesses to, collect and gather, restaurants to be able to go to and have a meal downtown. So I think that part of the new P&Z's commission goal will be to ensure that there's tangible decisions made to ensure community connection and engagement from all that live here. Thank you.
Ms. Ritz?
Okay, so in terms of reducing our overall taxes using the commercial space that we have available in Wilton, I feel that we need to, I believe that it's the Board of Selectmen's job to sell our town and the possibilities of our town to potential developers, to people who have great ideas that see potential in Wilton, that want to help transform it into a town that serves us, benefits us, and then works with us into the future. Wilton used to be a town that I remember from the 80s and 90s. It was thriving. There were businesses here. Everybody was enjoying the downtown in a way that we don't see people coming to our town today. So I'd like to see these empty spaces turned mixed use, consider maybe potentially rezoning to handle some of the issues with the not meeting the threshold. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Rainey?
Yes, I agree with what has been said. We do need to look into more mixed-use buildings in town center. I mean, if you look at all the development that's going on in town, I have to ask myself, what's the point of bringing all of these new residents into the town if they're just going to have to go elsewhere for dinner or for shopping? We should be doing something to make the town center more attractive to commercial businesses. So the people who are moving into town will also, be spending money in our businesses. I know I spoke of this a little bit earlier, and I know this isn't technically something that P&Z could control or is responsibility, but we have so many people driving through Wilton down Route 7, and I think most of them don't know that we have a town center that's right there, parallel to Route 7. So what can we as a town do to let people know that and to bring them into our businesses?
Mr. Chris?
Well, I'm just going to go with the Kimco example, and I agree that our commercial vacancies are
Closer
ridiculous.
to the microphone.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to just use the Kimco example and the progress that's being made there. Kimco's a property that's going to increase the grand list about 1.9 million, and agree with those on the stage that we do have a lot of vacancies. If we use that as the blueprint to grow, we're going to grow the grand list, we're going to create a much wider tax base, and make this town more affordable. And those are the things that we need to focus on. I'm sure a lot of folks would love to go back 20 years ago when this was a dry town and maybe look a lot like Weston and Easton. Well, we've already gone to a crossroads and we're going down another path. It's very important that we continue to go down that path. And I do think the POCD is the right framework, has guardrails in place that will guide us. Maybe not everybody understands every detail in it, but I'd encourage you guys to learn. I'm going to try my best to learn as much as I can about those guardrails. But the bottom line is it has to be a pro-growth town. We have to continue down the path. I mean, to have vacant buildings. When I moved here 16 years ago, we had a Gap. There were many other retail stores in that Kimco building. That particular location hasn't contributed much revenue at all to this town in probably a decade. So we need to see the revitalization of the downtown area, and we also need to replicate the Kimco model in these vacant buildings. And just one final comment on ASML. We also need to figure out a way to recruit not just one, but maybe 3 or 4 more ASMLs to this town. And that should be paramount as well.
Mr. Huffman?
I think that Colin and Ken are right about the diversification. We definitely need 3 or 4 more ASMLs, or slightly smaller maybe.
Microphone, Trevor, microphone.
Am I close enough now? So we do need to diversify. There is a desperate need for that. We do need a very pro-growth strategy in this town. And mixed building development is the future. Every project we have in the town center should have a first floor retail capability and then housing above it, in my opinion. So I think that we will be able to grow our tax base from that, and I think that'll be a great way to go forward.
Okay, and this next question really is a piece of what you've already talked about, but now that 5-story buildings are permitted and flood zone developments have been approved, what specific actions will you take to protect Wilton's remaining natural and visual character and, excuse me, and ensure that future development balances affordability, accessibility, that's enough, and let's see, you're up.
Okay, thank you, Kay. I think I gathered the majority of it there. So the vision I have for Wilton and our plan of conservation and development is that it should clearly define our priorities for smart growth, open space preservation, median income housing planning, infrastructure improvements, and prioritizing adaptive reuse. The planning process, as I've said prior, must include and seek the public input. That is the key to a successful plan for increasing engagement and for increasing buy-in from stakeholders. The stakeholders is every single resident of Wilton, Connecticut. Thank you.
Ms. Rick?
While we do need the extra space, obviously, for the apartments, I don't think that Wilton Town Center could benefit from all the buildings being 5 stories. It would be like a little mini New York. You wouldn't see the daylight. It's inappropriate for our town. We all agree that we need to have a diversification, a variety of housing options, bringing people in, but 5 stories is too much for town with the roof and the garage and everything else there. There are locations that we can identify where it's appropriate to have, the 3 stories, and it works well. It's in other towns around us as well. Some of them only have 1 and 3, but without really identifying each lot within town and what is appropriate in our view, what we already have, what's coming up that we're unaware of. We're going to end up with whatever the developers decide to do piece by piece. So that's why a cohesive plan, forward-thinking, community-focused is what we need to get back on track.
Ms. Rainey?
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure getting to go door to door and canvassing with voters in town. And someone said something to me last week that I had just taken for granted living here. But she said that she had lived in many suburban areas outside of large cities across the country, and not one of them had as much space per house as Wilton does, right? She had lived in San Francisco, outside of Dallas, outside of Chicago, small lots, nothing being this close to New York City and having this much space is really, really special. It makes Wilton really special, and we need to maintain that. What do people like best about Wilton? Well, obviously our schools, #1. #2 is the Norwalk River Valley Trail. People love the outdoor spaces that we have, and we really need to maintain them. And like Michelle was saying, when we put together the next plan of conservation and development, we really need to be proactive and getting input from the community and what they want to see, what spaces are important to them that we maintain. I don't think anyone wants to see, beautiful old trees being cut down to make space for new development. So we really need to be thoughtful about what are the best spots for new development to go and what do we need to maintain about Wilton.
Mr. Chris?
Well, I do think that we have a great blueprint for success. I'm an outdoorsman, love to be out on all the trails that we have, the conservation lands, and I think we have an awful lot of that. What we do have is an eyesore on Route 7. And Route 7 is a great opportunity for us to work with developers and be very proactive in how we're going to develop the properties to, again, increase revenue. We have so many dormant properties along Route 7. I'm not a proponent of seeing the downtown corridor, a beautiful downtown, ever see another massive 5-story building go up again. I think that area of our town is naturally beauty. I mean, there's just natural beauty there with the river, and I think there's a lot of pedestrian areas throughout that area that are terrific. But Route 7 is a problem. I think that you mentioned an ability for, say, ASML or the next ASML to ride your bike to work. I wouldn't ride my bike on Route 7. Frankly, I have a soon-to-be 16-year-old who I don't even know I'd let her drive to school because Route 7 is really a very scary road. The fact that there hasn't been a fatality on Route 7 is a miracle, and that road is controlled by the state of Connecticut. And what I think we should do is we should use the commercial properties that sit on either side of Route 7 as leverage to improve the safety. Not only will it improve safety for all of our drivers, but also will create a better retail experience for those that come to this town to invest, hundreds of millions of dollars in capital. Thank you.
Mr. Huffman?
So one of the ways I think we could actually help people understand what the potential development in town is, and this is a little geeky, but I apologize, I'm a little geeky, is to develop 3D models of the town. We actually could do that. We could take the overlays. The downtown's actually pretty small. There are only about 20 or 30 or 40 buildings. And we could actually take the overlays that define what's allowed, and we could actually build the town virtually. We could go to one of the colleges nearby, and they could build it. And they could build 3 or 4 cases. And they're not perfect models, and they'd be really quick. And we could do this. And you could walk through the town. And you could say, what if we let it be 5 stories? What if we let it be 3 stories? And this would be a great way to see what the town could be.
Mr. Hoffman?
Like many people here, we moved to Wilton because of the schools. And that was what drew us originally to the town, was the quality of the school system. And now that we have outsourced our children completely, we have stayed in the town because of the open space, the trails, the environment, the ability to enjoy the outdoors, and to feel like a community in this town and be along with people who support the sort of beauty of living in Wilton. We have a lot of great volunteerism in the town. I think we can direct it more, as people have said here, to coming up with more comprehensive solutions. We need to act in a nonpartisan way. I don't know if you folks are aware, but the subcommittee that did the planning for the downtown Wilton area did not have any representation of Democrats on that committee, which actually violates provisions of the town charter. I think that's nonpartisan. I don't think that's nonpartisan. I think that we really need to work together. We need more people, and I hate to point one person out. Barbara Geddes, who's sitting here, comes to every planning and zoning meeting and sits through the meetings and contributes ideas about enhancing the architecture, signage, the beauty of the town. And I don't understand why you're not up here, but we have great volunteerism and people like that. So that's what I think will solve the problems in the town. The rest is math and dollars and those kinds of things, and working better with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance.
Any other comment on that question? All right, then, Ms. Rich, you're the first to respond to this, and it's a basic question. Will you consider wheel stops, barriers to be installed in parking areas such as Stop and Shop to avoid accidents?
Wheel stop barriers,
I think
you said?
either the card says wheel stops dash barriers. I'm assuming the humps, that can slow down
Things so
traffic.
you don't go through the parking space and
Any of
go.
those that type.
Speed bumps or the barrier at the end of the parking space, so you don't go through and crash into the other people trying to get out with their groceries from, yeah. I have no issue with that. I feel like we've all discussed parking. It's time to reimagine things and do things differently than maybe we have before. So what could serve us better in some of these parking lots? Maybe that is an answer, or maybe, you know, covered solar panels, covered parking spaces, municipal parking. There's a lot of options.
Ms. Rainey?
And yes, I would support that in our parking lots I'm assuming it's a safety issue, to make it, I'm
Slowing
personally.
down traffic.
Slowing,
Slowing down traffic.
you're talking about the barriers in parking spaces or in parking lots?
I
or
don't know
on-
specifically what this questioner is referring to. What comes to my mind is the kind of speed bump sort of thing. Anything that would slow down cars in parking lots.
Speed bumps are great too.
Yes.
That type, something of that sort.
Yes, definitely. Walking through the Stop and Shop parking lot with my son is fun. I think everyone else would agree that we could definitely use some speed bumps in parking lots to keep it safer for everyone. Yes.
Mr. Chris?
Well, I have tendency to speed around town, and I'm wrong to do that. I've been focused more on trying to conform to the speed limit. My daughter reminds me all the time, Dad, you're doing 45 and a 35, and I slow down. But I'll tell you a quick story. When I moved to Stamford, Connecticut back in 2004, I lived on Woodbury Avenue, and beautiful area, Springdale, and we visited the house and fell in love with it during the day and had no idea that it was a cut-through. So within about a week of living in the house, I realized that this was a massive cut-through to get down to the Hope Street area of town, across town, you know, up to High Ridge and Long Ridge. And I immediately worked with the city of Stamford and petitioned every one of my neighbors to have speed bumps installed. And I was successful. So I do think we need to slow folks down. I think safety is one of the biggest issues that we have in town. I can't get over the fact that we haven't had more people injured, either crossing a crosswalk, or for that matter, the cyclists that we see brazenly moving up and down our roadways. And I think Route 7 is a ticking time bomb that we need to address.
Mr. Hubbard?
As a member of CERT in Wilton, I probably spend more time in Wilton's streets than probably anyone. And anything that slows down cars, I'm for.
Mr. Johnson?
I don't think that walking across the streets downtown should be a Darwinian experience. I would favor the idea of speed bumps on the street that runs through the center of Wilton. It would slow things down. People could look outside, enjoy the view, and stay alive.
Ms. Safety?
I also agree with all of the candidates with regard to a speed bump or a safety barrier. I do want to sort of call out that we really do need to sort of ask when these questions come about, what does the town want? And revert back to how current P&Z operates in a silo, and they're making decisions without town input. So these are the type of questions that we don't have the data or information for, because that information is not accessible. So I can make an informed decision about the speed bumps when that data and information is available.
Any other comment on that? All right, we're coming close to the time for closing statements, but let me try and get one more question in. Could areas near the Wilton train station be further developed to provide more affordable housing? And Ms. Rainey, you're the first to respond.
Definitely. I think, as we have all mentioned earlier, that Route 7 is a great area for development, and especially with the train station right there. And as I mentioned earlier, with the bridge that now connects the train station to town center, I think that area definitely makes sense.
Mr. Chris?
I think that we just have to remain patient. I mean, a lot of these buildings that are dormant or, you know, that are ripe for development will take time to turn over. I do think that we have a lot of blueprints for success that this Planning and Zoning Commission and the great leadership of the commission have put forward. I do think that there are certain flaws in everything we do with commercial properties. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the 5-story building here downtown, but you know, there's not a commercial property that's ever been built that one could say is perfect. I am in favor of continuing to look at Route 7. I think that Route 7 is where the great opportunities are, and that will enable us to really increase the aesthetic and the demand for our town as we continue to develop Route 7. I just point out that the buildings across from ASML that are going up as apartments are outstanding. They're very aesthetically pleasing, and I do think that if we saw more and more of that up and down Route 7 with, you know, retail space on the first floor, this town would change in a big way.
Mr. Hubbard?
I do agree with Colin that building across from ASML, I think it's 88 Danbury Road, is a great example of a successful development. Relative to development at train stations, I think one of the things we've got to worry about is what's going to go on at Cannondale train station. I'm not thinking that we should develop it, but I think somebody else will develop it, and we need to develop a plan for how that might get developed.
Mr. Hoffman?
I'm holding CC and Savitt personally responsible for improving the train service to Wilton. But aside from that, I really think that Route 7 does, has been said, represent an opportunity. I'm not sure we have to build the 5 stories to, you know, exercise the value of that opportunity in downtown Wilton, but there certainly is an opportunity to improve the overall look of Route 7 as it cascades through Wilton, unless people think that power substations and storage units are attractive, which I think can be improved.
Ms. Agnew?
I would also agree that Route 7 is an opportunity for us as a town to increase our basis of affordable or median income housing, I think that the appearance of Wilton downtown is not the appropriate place for a 5-story building. And again, unfortunately, because the current P&Z was unable to negotiate, we are stuck with that building casting a shadow down on us constantly. So I think that I would agree with the candidates to my right that there is ample opportunity on Route 7 before we start seeking to redevelop what is currently existing downtown. Thank you.
Ms. Root?
In terms of Route 7 development, I think that we could be creative and come up with ways that it works for us as a community. I agree that there's a lot of opportunity there. You know, how is the traffic, which is already annoying to drive with in the morning, how is that going to impact us with the new vehicles and potentially additional lights and stuff to handle all of the traffic? But the opportunity there is to connect some of Route 7 to town, I think. And there are, similar to the bridge that we discussed, how beneficial that is to the town, taking us from the train station into town. There are great opportunities if we look at these buildings to not only have apartments, but to have businesses, and then to have the walkability, tie back to town, come up with some sort of traffic plan in advance, one that includes safeguarding my bicyclists as they ride Route 7 in the morning traffic.
All right, then it's now time for closing.
Expand the roads, I was
Sorry.
kidding.
It's now time for closing statements. So I would ask the timers to clear their stopwatches. Each of these candidates will get 1 minute for a closing statement. Just let me know when you're ready. Okay, all right, and Ms. Rich, you're the first one to give your statement.
Okay. I would like to just say that I love this town. I grew up as a neighbor of Wilton. I moved away for my career, and when I decided to come back, there was no other town I wanted to even consider in Fairfield County. Wilton has always had this special magic to it, which does have to do with these wide open natural spaces and the type of people that live here care about their community. I would like to see community pride come back into downtown Wilton, which includes taking back ownership of the town green, revitalizing that area in a way that we can all take pride in, coming up with solutions that are beneficial to the community, environmentally friendly, forward-thinking, natural things that fit in with what we've already got and enhance the locations that we have access to build a thriving community with lower taxes and opportunity for all.
Thank you. Ms. Rainey?
Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for organizing this event and to the library for hosting us. And thank you, everyone who's come out and chosen to spend your evening with us and engage in this electoral process. We all really appreciate it. I'm running because Wilton deserves a competently run P&Z that makes smart, well thought out decisions that will benefit the town for generations to come. Look, development is going to happen no matter who gets elected to this P&Z. So it's crucially important that we are electing people who are going to make sure that it's the right kind of development that will both be beneficial to Wilton and allow it to maintain what makes the town so special. We also need to increase our median income housing, ensuring a wider variety of options for residents and moving Wilton on a path to obtaining exemption from 830G developments. And importantly, P&Z needs to listen to the community and have much better avenues for allowing public comment. Right now, people don't feel as if they're being heard.
Thank you.
Well, I certainly may look like a politician because I get all dressed up tonight, but I'm not. I've been in business for over 20 years, mostly in the printing and converting of paper, believe it or not. And I've had a great opportunity to be able to afford this town. As I said in my earlier comments, I believe that this town does have an affordability gap that needs to be closed. I don't think the state or folks in Hartford will help us close that gap. I think it's up to all of us in this room, and I do agree that a bipartisan effort is absolutely necessary to closing that gap. But what we have in front of us is a great opportunity. There is so much untapped potential. The dormant commercial spaces are abundant, and over the next 10 years, we're going to have an outstanding opportunity to turn them into moneymakers for this town. We have a great opportunity to increase our tax base and spread it across to increase affordability, and I believe it will happen, and that's why I'm running. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Hufford?
So I'm running for P&Z to increase our ability to talk to each other, to find out what we want the plan for our futures to be. I'd like to increase the amount of communications between each other. I'd like to do open houses, have 3D models of the town so that we can look and see what the town might do. I'd like to spend more time planning, less time dealing with zoning. I'd like to spend less time on Zoom calls where people are arguing details, paint colors, little details like that. I think we need to figure out where we're going to develop, how we're going to develop, and what we want. And without planning, we won't be able to figure that out.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
First, I'd like to thank the library, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, and I'd like to thank Good Morning Wilton for all the volunteerism they've done and for hosting us tonight. Wilton is really at a crossroads with this stuff. I think that it's time that we take a look at how the Planning and Zoning Board listens to the public. A lot of people have said, and Trevor has just said, that it's not fun to lose 4 hours every other Monday night and listen to the details, but we're not seeing the big picture. I think the only way we're going to do that is to have special meetings with the public on a regular basis where we can get the input of the public, shut up instead of talking on planning and zoning, and listen to what you have to say so it can guide us better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Simon Benning?
Again, thank you to the League of Women's Voters, the Wilton Library, Kay for moderating, and Good Morning Wilton. And thank you for spelling my name correctly on my name tag. I'm running for planning and zoning because Wilton deserves leaders who possess an innovative and grounded vision, one that respects our past while planning with intention for what comes next. Professionally, I'm a critical care registered nurse. I graduated from Wilton High School, and I am now raising my children in the same community that shaped me. Planning and zoning isn't just about maps and bylaws, it's about shaping the lived experience of our town. I will make proactive, inclusive decisions that serve Wilton today and for the future. This candidacy is my commitment to give back and to care for Wilton with the same thoughtfulness I bring to every patient and project that I lead. Vote for Michelle Saglameni on November 4th. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking the candidates.